Welcome to today's episode of the AI Trailblazer podcast. Today we have a very exciting guest. He is none other than Travis from Carbon Voice. So, for those of you who are just joining the podcast, we are Convert Inbox and we specialize in installing AI systems that help B2B software companies grow their business and revenue. So, if you own a B2B software company and you're interested in a free growth consultation, just drop us the word growth in the DMs below. So, Travis, let's start off with yourself. What's your background and what led you to start Carbon Voice?
Thanks for having me. So I am my background. I've kind of been around for a long time. Started out in communications at a company called AOL. Back in the early days, was part of the founding team of AOL Instant Messenger. And over the course of my career, I've kind of gone from communication and early internet to speech recognition. In the early days of speech recognition, doing a lot of what we now think of as Siri and Alexa and a lot of those capabilities was early in wearables with headsets at a company called Jawbone, and then also health wearables there. Then did was at Uber for a brief period of time, and then Samsung Next, building out a product organization, and that then led me into Carbon Voice. And the backstory of Carbon Voice really is a story that kind of goes back to the very beginning. That I've always been fascinated with how people communicate and how people communicate across distance. When we first started getting people online, it was really exciting that people could communicate and be on the go and interacting. And all of that was built on this foundation of text, which is really new if you think about the grand scheme of humans, right? We've, for the most part, talk and converse by talking. And it was only in the past 40 years that we started to use text as a primary way of communicating. And we did a lot of that because it was asynchronous. It allowed us to work in different flows and different time zones. And what I started to realize was, as I had a team distributed across 14 time zones, was we were in a place where we couldn't write emails back and forth. We couldn't comment on Google Docs anymore. We needed to talk about certain things. Yet, as soon as we needed to talk about it, all of a sudden we needed to jump on a call or into a meeting. And so that was the idea behind Carbon Voice. So, is what if we could still do all those conversations but asynchronous? And that's kind of what we've been building with Carbon Voice.
So, basically, asynchronous communications. So, what would you say is the main, role of yourself within the business and how does it fit into the bigger picture at Carbon Voice?
I mean, we're still a small company, so I'm the founder and CEO, but I also play many roles every day. I have a fairly deep technical background, so I dive into a lot of that, drive a lot of the product direction, and then spend a lot of time with customers, trying to help them get onboarded, learn from them, and figure out what's next, and really try to keep a pulse on where the market's going. You know, the big shift, as everyone knows, has been AI. And when we started the company, we had a thesis that a lot of the things that we would want to do and would ultimately need to be done to make the problem work was going to be possible with AI, but that it was all going to commoditize. So we spent a lot of time working on what we thought were the core user interface dynamics and the application, with the expectation that core models and things like that would start to become commoditized and readily available. And so, on one hand, it's been nice to sort of see that come true. On the other hand, to your question of what I do every day is, as you know, it's a full-time job trying to keep up with all the new things changing and how we can now take advantage of what used to not be possible. So that's a big part of what I think my role is these days, is really understanding where everything's going and trying to figure out how do we take advantage of that.
Right, makes sense. So, you spoke a lot about yourself being in different roles within the company. So, as the founder and CEO, where do you want the company to be at like 6 to 12 months from now? What is the goal?
Yeah, I mean, the goal the goal for the company and really the space overall, I kind of think about what's the space where we're trying to get people to, and then how we can play a role in that in the company. For the space, I really want to help people get out of meetings and get out of phone calls. We spend too much time in that to make decisions, and the big goal there is to transition people more to understanding and thinking about asynchronous voice as part of that. We want the company to be the best solution out there for doing that, so that we have solved the core problems of really doing voice and making voice not only the best way to communicate, but also the easiest way, because it's just very fluid with how people are doing things. And so, from a growth perspective, we have a product that people download, love, start using with their team, and say things like, "Wow, this is awesome!" Real solid love coming out of it. And so now it's just about how do we get as many people able to do that, get on board it as simply as possible. So that's my focus over the next 6 to 12 months is really getting us to that spot where we're the dominant solution for asynchronous voice.
Okay, so then what's your plan for getting Carbon Voice to be the best asynchronous voice solution out there?
Yeah, how do we get there? Uh, to me, as a communication app, a lot of it is build a great product and make it really easy for it to be viral on its own by the very nature of people coming in wanting to use it to communicate with people around them. So a lot of it starts with product led growth aspects. Another piece is using reaching out to people, finding the target audience. And we've seen a number of people who sort of are interacting with lots of different companies. So we've gotten very focused on a set of people, in particular coaches. We've been finding a lot of success with that are exec coaches or mentors, advisors, because what's unique with them is they want to make themselves available when the entrepreneur or the person they're coaching needs their help, but they can't be around 24/7, but the problems come up 24/7. And so we've been finding them as a great avenue. So a lot of it's about how do we reach out to them and efficiently get to them and then help them on board really quickly, and engage with their clients through the product.
Makes sense. So I was curious as to like what makes your product different from something like, Slack, for example, where you can send voice notes as well, and then there is also a transcript of that voice note as well, and then you can also still send messages and threads. What's the USP in this case?
Yeah, great question. So, um, at a high level, much of what we have built is Slack is a good analogy. And some people will say, oh, Carbon Voice is like an audio Slack. Where it differs a lot is Slack is really designed mostly for people sitting at their desk. It was built for engineers sitting in front of their desk, and it's very efficient for that. And then been made mobile, but it's still primarily designed and orchestrated around text as the primary input mechanism. Carbon Voice flips that. And in doing that flipping means there's trade offs in terms of the experience. And so, what we feel more like is a asynchronous phone call. It can feel like you're talking back and forth just with some time in between. And we've designed it to really be fluid at that experience. And so, things like transcriptions are automatic, come out of that. Whereas often, the transcriptions are sort of sitting underneath the voice, but it's sort of secondary to it. For us, because the nature of who is using us on the go, we make it really easy to just tap a button and press play and catch up. So a lot of things that are focused on about people who are on the go, who are not in front of their computer most of the time. And it's a lot of design aspects, but then how that feeds into features that we need to create to solve those use cases. So automatic transition, low network, being really resilient to coming in and out of good network, the ability to just press buttons and catch up in a very gestural interface for swiping to record, which you can do in a car very easily or while walking down the street. And then the way we integrate AI is really focused around what audio does when you add a lot of content through audio, you then need ways to distill it down in a way that in Slack, you don't really need that as much. So we've really focused on those things that make audio hard to do, making those work really well.
Got it. So primarily, it just takes audio as the primary input mechanism instead of something like text. So that is how it differs from Slack. Okay, so now could you share more a bit as well about like what are some of the challenges that you have faced on your journey to reach some of the goals that you mentioned earlier? For example, making Carbon Voice the dominant asynchronous voice solution or making like onboarding easier.
Yeah, I mean, every company has the challenges as they grow and try to figure out, and it sort of goes through evolutions of things. So, in the early stages, a lot of it was what is the right experience? How do we create that feel of what I was just talking about? If you look at what we've created, in many ways, you can sort of squint and it sort of feels similar to an iMessage, a WhatsApp, a Slack, whatever. But there's some things that are very different from that experience that, in many ways, are trade offs against some of the text based interfaces. And so, a lot of where we spent challenges was how far do we go in one direction or another? A good example is in the early days of what we were doing, we were very much leaning more heavily into voice, and almost text wasn't even part of it because we didn't think transcription was good enough quality to really maturely do something with, and it was sort of often at odds with getting the content and being able to be hands free. What happened in the process, though, was we hit a point where AI and the approach of using AI to do transcription made the quality so much better that we could integrate it more tightly into the experience where we became almost multimodal. You don't even really notice if it was sent with voice or text. So a lot of it was finding those balances, and I think there's a lot of places where we created wrong metaphors that were too different from what people had experienced in existing apps. And so that was a lot of the challenge in the early stage. I think we also ran into a lot of challenges around stability. And I think what we were finding, especially in communication, is that stability is probably one of the most important things, that it just has to work consistently. And that's often not the case in new software for other things. You're creating something of real value, and people are like, "Well, I can't do it," and they'll deal with more bugs. But in communication, people really need it to work because that is the centerpiece of what they're doing. And so there were a lot of places where we often were trying to put it into people's hands too quickly, and it wasn't stable enough. And so we're getting bad signal out of that. So those were a couple of the big things. I think the last one I'd sort of point to is we for a moment we were seeing a pattern play out with our users where they were using us to do voice memos, and you can do that today in the app and still do it. But we were finding that they were doing that, and so we rotated a bit of our marketing message towards that to try to capture that difference. Turns out that was a bad idea to sort of shift towards it. It felt good in terms of easy onboarding, but it was bad because it wasn't the core differentiation. And if you move forward to today or in the past week, ChatGPT, added the recorder. We're seeing more and more recorders out there, and so luckily we had realized that pretty quickly and moved away from that before there was an onslaught in the market. But that was also another sort of learning that we kind of did a little sort of detour for a little bit, not from a product perspective, but mostly from a messaging perspective.
Okay, interesting. It's all about like trying to differentiate yourself through your marketing message. So then, what would you say are the main metrics that you are focused on improving right now as the founder and CEO?
The core metrics we're trying to improve.
Yes, that are most
Yeah.
important to you
So
to
the
improve.
core
Yeah.
Yeah, the core metrics we are heavily focused on is kind of this three things. One is the speed of onboarding. Can people get in and start to do those key actions that they're trying to do? Another piece of that linked with that is what I call the speed to wow. Do they get in and sort of not only do the things we need them to do, but are they kind of blown away with the differentiation of what we've done? And then the third is really the traditional viral factors. So how many people come in and invite other people? How, are they setting up conversations? How many messages do they do? So that is a whole system that just has to feed itself. And so each day we kind of wake up and see which of that link is the weakest, and what can we do to kind of improve and make that a bit better. So those are sort of the key metrics that we're focused on a lot right now is just those growth mechanics and the viral aspect to things. But the more growth hacker people will sort of know those as K factor and the inviter flows and stuff.
Okay, then where do you want this matrix to be in the next 6 to 12 months?
I mean, what we
Is it to
really want to
2x
see.
it, 3x? Yeah,
Yeah, good question. Uh, I think what we want, we obviously want in the traditional nomenclature, the K factor to be above one. We want people inviting more people. Every person who's coming in is inviting more people. So I think that's one of the key things that we want to get to that place. And I think we need to probably triple, quadruple the success rate of people getting in and fully landing into the right spot. Some of that could be tightening who is coming in, right? So it's very easy to bring in poor users that are not, or users that are poor fit for your product. And so sometimes you tighten on that front. And then the second is just making it easier for them to get through the funnel.
makes sense. So you talked about making it easier for your users to get through the funnel. Can you share like a more specific example of what you guys are doing now to simplify it?
Yeah. So a few things that we recently released were we've had, so you come into the system, you download the app. How do you find someone? How do you find the people you want to go connect to? We had the ability to just add email address. I could send a message to any email in there. One simple example was, could we take a nice comma separated value list so that someone could put 50 emails in there to bring their whole team in. That's an example of something that can really smooth that onboarding flow. The other thing was, while we allowed you to plug in an email address and phone number, and we kind of thought of that as the username to find the people you knew. Turns out a lot of people actually just wanted a username. They just wanted the ability to say, "Oh, let me message at Bruce Wong," and reach him that way, rather than having to know his email and plug that in. And so we have added that into the system. Another one that we're working on right now is linking up domains and people there. So if you've come in, another colleague has come in from the same domain, helping you realize that there are multiple people from your domain and find each other and get a workspace set up and connect. So those types of mechanics really help teams get in and efficiently find each other and get going.
Got it. Then what about like when it comes to growing the company and the new user, new customer acquisition? What sort of challenges are you facing in this aspect right now?
Yeah, a lot of it, a lot of it is the noise floor. How do you get above the noise floor is the big challenge. It takes a lot of repeat messages to people to be found. Activity on LinkedIn, if that's where your users coming from. For us, given we're more B2B, that is a lot of where we see more interest and stuff attracting. So a lot of it's just building that base where people are sort of finding and the corpus of connection, and then finding some of those right users. We've been fortunate enough to find these exec coaches I was mentioning have been interesting because they're not only loving the product for themselves, but they often end up being the referrers to other people by the very nature of them finding it and using it with their clients. So it's finding those tricks so that you come in as a warm referral rather than as a cold outreach. And even in the cold outreach world, that does work, but you have to warm everything up. It takes time. You got to get the right list. You got to get the right messaging. So every one of those things has to get tightened into a place that's really working for you.
Okay, makes sense. So you mentioned a couple of channels like LinkedIn and then a bit of cold outreach as well. Like, could you share more about like what's been working more well for you and what hasn't been working as well as you expected?
Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn has worked pretty well in terms of the engagement. I do find I go and talk with people, and they will often say, "Oh, I saw you on saw this stuff on LinkedIn," and so despite not even seeing the engagement, they hadn't liked it, they hadn't clicked, they hadn't replied to it. It was top of mind for them, so that's I think been working, and I think it's one of the things that a lot of people can fatigue of and just takes time. I think what is not necessarily working there is finding that balance of, I think it's very easy to get stuff where it's the too much is going on. And so, how to make sure that the stuff stays high enough quality that people continue to engage, I think is one of the things. On email outreach, I think for us, what we've seen is actually really high response rate and open rates, or really high open rates. What we've been working a little bit more to tune is some of the action, like what do people need to go do, and how do we make that super actionable. So the call to action is probably the biggest thing that we've been trying to perfect.
Hmm. So what is the call to action that you are using right now? Is it just to get them booked on a meeting? Is it get them started on a free trial? Like,
Yeah,
how does it
it's a
work
good
right now?
question. I mean, we've been playing with a few different things. I think the what a lot of people do is try to get you into a meeting. Let's book a 15-minute meeting. We've been trying to stay away from that because at the end of the day, that's the opposite of what we're selling. And so it's a little disconnected to say, hey, I'm going to save you meetings. Let me take some of your time. Let's have a meeting. And so we've been trying to get them really into the product where we can then start to talk to them through the product so they get a sense for it. When we do that, it works incredibly well. We can talk with someone and get much deeper and more often than they could if they jumped on a Zoom and then went through that process of doing a demo. So that is working a lot better when we get to the other side. The question, that we have to solve is how to get them through that hump to do that, and how do we make that feel as simple as possible so that they will go take that action. But that is that's the tuning and stuff we've been working on that side.
Got it. Then let's say hypothetically, because you mentioned like a couple of different challenges right now, if you had like a magic wand to solve like one thing in the business right now that is either holding you back or slowing down your progress to get to your goals, what would that one thing be?
Uh, I think a lot of it is every day I wake up feeling like I still do too much stuff that is manual, too many things manually that should be automated. And so I think that magic wand, and especially on the lead list generation, how do I sort of reach out to this person? How do I tailor that? I feel like a lot of there are solutions to that from an AI perspective, but a lot of them feel um, too happy to just spam, and that can burn through your market. And so it feels like there's a gap often of like, I don't really want to sort of set this thing free to kind of go just out doing a bunch of stuff, but I feel like I'm moving, copying, pasting, and organizing too much here. How do I find that middle zone? And it feels like we're definitely in the place where I can spend more time every day creating tools to do some of those things, or creating agents to build individual pieces. Um, but that, I think that is the trade-off every day that also feels that is there, is that uh, do I wake up today and do a bunch of things I know I can do that I'm on my checklist, or do I spend a bunch of time today researching how I can go do this stuff and do it in a different way, and potentially discover it's not yet possible or it is possible? and I need to go build it. So that's the thing that is where that magic wand comes in. If
I
someone could
see.
wave a magic wand and we already have it all, and it's known to work, that would be amazing.
I see. So just mainly the time constraint of things and also just trying to find the best possible solution to whatever tasks that take up a lot of time right now.
That's right.
Okay. So sort of jumping into the last segment here, what sort of shifts or trends are you seeing in your industry right now? And then how is that impacting your business and the growth of it?
Um, so the trends, uh, so the trends in my particular industry, I would say have been definitely seeing a lot more openness to voice in a way that I've never seen before. As an example, I thought developers would be the slowest to adopt voice because they sit in front of the computer all day and interact there. And voice is even penetrating there. People are using things like whisper flow, talking to cursor, and just coding in that way. So it's kind of fascinating how voice quickly is adopting, and not that that's our core market. It just shows you the furthest from our market is actually already getting into voice. What we're seeing holistically is the interest and value in voice is just expanding across the board very quickly. So that's really cool. I think the other part of my industry, which is just tech generally, is how AI is being used in everyone's function, and how it's also changing how we do what we do. So I mentioned I'm fairly technical, but I haven't coded in 25 years. Three things that I vibe coded recently have made their way into production. And that's a fundamental shift in terms of both where I would have spent my time historically, but also the interface between someone who, let's call me a product manager in that role, interfacing with the engineering team. Usually that would be a very different line of demarcation. The product manager would not be handing over code. And in today's world of AI and vibe coding and things like that, that's exactly what happened here. Now, I would probably call it, I handed over a mostly done prototype, so where we could use a lot of the code. It wasn't sort of completely ship ready, but that's fascinating to me in terms of just the workflow, what I could go do, how I could ask the questions, how I could refine what I wanted to do. Even a lot of my marketing copy, a lot of my marketing assets, I'm also often just dialoguing back and forth with ChatGPT to kind of improve it and make it better. Get me clip art, stuff like that, or stuff that I would have been looking for clip art, or photos from some sort of open gallery. I'm now just using ChatGPT to do, or other tools like that. And so it's that to me is like the crazy fascinating thing is just the way of building is changing so much.
Absolutely. Yeah, that is very interesting how AI is changing everything. And then what you mentioned earlier about the developers jumping into this as well, like asynchronous voice communication, it's really interesting as well. So that is actually about it for the podcast interview, Travis. Once again, thank you for taking the time to jump on this and sharing this valuable insights with our audience. So if they want to reach you, what is, or find out more about the company, what is the best way for them to do so?
Yeah, you can learn about Carbon Voice at getcarbon.app. Or if you want to reach out to me, you can reach out to me at cv.chat/Travis.
All right, then there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. So once again, a pleasure to have you here today, Travis.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Bye bye.